Okay, so the Gemara that we learned yesterday, we spoke about the different opinions. We spoke about three opinions as to what constitutes a fruit tree, or what clarifies what is considered a fruit versus a vegetable regarding the laws of brachas. And we mentioned Rashi learns that gavza means the branch, that as long as the branch stays, that makes it a bayrei pri ha'etz, it makes it a fruit tree. And if the branch dies out, then it would be considered a bayrei pri ha'adama. And we gave an example of a banana. The banana, not only does the branch die out, even the stem dies. And so that would for sure be a bayrei pri ha'adama. But then we did mention the opposite view, and that is that as long as the roots are there, that really is what makes it a fruit, that you don't have to replant it. And as long as it grows every year, the roots stay, so that would be considered a fruit. And according to that view, a banana would probably be ha'etz, should be a ha'etz, because the roots still stay for the banana tree, and they grow a stem and branches and fruits every year. So that would be, according to that view, a ha'etz, because the roots stay. And then we said there's an intermediate view that holds that the main thing is that the tree should stay, and as long as the trunk of the tree lives throughout the year, that would be considered a fruit tree. And according to that view, a banana, the trunk of the banana tree, the real trunk would be the stem, and that dies out. There is a false trunk that stays, but the real trunk is really some type of a stem that grows, and that would be considered a vegetable, because it's the stem, which we're calling the trunk, it dies out. And so those were the different views and the way to explain our Gemara. And I mentioned the word gavza, and the Gemara seems to be that might be the argument, because Rashi spells out clearly that gavza means the branch, while the other view, the opposite view, seems to hold that gavza is the roots. And if you read it that way, saying as long as the roots are there and it'll give off fruit, that's good enough. This is not the only way of explaining the Gemara. There are other ways of explaining the Gemara, but I think this is the easiest. Now, the middle opinion, the way they would read the Gemara, there was another version in that it said, Isei le'ilana, if the tree is there. And that middle view would follow that version, that the tree, meaning the trunk, stays. As long as the trunk lives the year, that would be considered a tree. And so this was the Gemara that was a continuation of explaining our Mishnah, because our Mishnah had said that if a person recites a bayrei pri ha'etz, the fruit bracha, on a vegetable, you do not fulfill your obligation. The Gemara thought that's obvious. Of course you don't fulfill your obligation. You said a fruit bracha for a fruit of a tree on a vegetable. How could that fulfill your obligation? The Gemara answered, no, it's not so obvious, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that a wheat is considered a fruit tree. And if wheat is considered a fruit tree, at least it's a type of tree, a type of min ilan, it's a type of tree. Therefore, there was thought that maybe, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you would fulfill your obligation if you said bayrei pri ha'etz on a stalk of wheat. That was a thought. And the conclusion of the Gemara is that that doesn't work. So it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work that way, why do you not fulfill your obligation, is because wheat stalks do not, they need to be planted every single year. Or the branches, the branch doesn't live the year, the trunk doesn't live the year, or the roots don't live the year. But ultimately, wheat does not live the wheat tree, the wheat vegetation, herbage does not last throughout the year. It needs to be replanted. Yes, Susan.
Okay, the papaya and the banana, when both are green, they can be cooked and eaten as a vegetable. When they become ripe on the tree, they're eaten as a fruit. So what, in other words, do we?
So what you want to say is that it should follow the criteria of a fruit or a vegetable is how it's eaten, if it has to be cooked or if it's eaten raw. But that's not the way the Gemara decides on the criteria of what's a fruit and what's a vegetable. So you're looking at it as how you make it edible
when it is harvested.
Okay, but the Gemara doesn't follow that way of thinking.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, it's not saying that you shouldn't cook it. It's just, or you should cook it. It's just saying that this is what, there has to be a rule. What's the criteria of a fruit or a vegetable? And this makes it a fruit. In other words, just because you harvest it later doesn't make it a fruit of a tree more or less or less. You know what I mean? You're eating it like that way, but that doesn't make it more of a fruit of a tree or fruit of the ground. Okay, so we turn the page. We're on 40b, and we're going to start the next Gemara. The next Gemara is going to talk about when one recites a bracha shehakol, does that cover bread and wine? If they mistakenly recite the bracha shehakol, will that cover bread and wine? That's going to be a topic of discussion. Now, before we do the next Gemara, let's just look at the Mishnah. So we got to turn back to page 40a. We're on 40b, but we're going to turn back to 40a and just look at the Mishnah once more. And the Mishnah said, V'al kulam, and on all of them, im amar shehakol niya b'dvara yatsa. So there was a Mishnah on page 40a, towards the end of the page, and it said on all of them, if one recited shehakol, which is the general bracha, yatsa, you have fulfilled your obligation. And the simple reading is that is after the fact. You made a mistake. You said shehakol, you are yotza, but we mentioned that applies sometimes even before. If you don't know which bracha to recite, you also can do the shehakol, and you have fulfilled your obligation. Now, what does it mean v'yal kulam, and on all of them? On all of them, if you said shehakol, you fulfilled your obligation. So the previous paragraph spoke about fruits and vegetables, right? This is a Mishnah. And this Mishnah comes after the previous Mishnah. And what did the previous Mishnah speak about? So the previous Mishnah was 5 pages ago in the beginning of the tractate. And that Mishnah spoke about many types of foods. It spoke about fruits. It spoke about vegetables. It spoke about wine. It spoke about bread. So it talked about many types of food. So when it says here on all of them, if you say shehakol, you have fulfilled your obligation, what is that referring to? Is that referring to the previous sentence in this Mishnah on page 40a? Or is it referring to page 35a, where we spoke about all the different fruits, vegetables, bread, wine? is it going back to that as well? So now we're on 40b, and we're 3 lines from the top of the page. V'al kulam, on all of them, im amar shahakol niyabed varay, the person says shahakol, yatsa, he has fulfilled his obligation. Itmar, it was said in the base medrash. It was said in the Talmudic base medrash, in the hall, in the study hall. Rav Huna said that you fulfilled your obligation if you say shahako chutz min hapas min hayayin, except for bread and wine. So Rav Huna says there is an exception to this rule, that bread and wine is not included. For some reason, bread and wine is extra special, and you can't fulfill your obligation by shahakol bracha on these 2 items. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, and Rabbi Yochanan says that afilu pas v'yayin, even bread and wine, although they may be special, the bracha shahakol fulfills the obligation of bread and wine as well. Now, what is special about bread and wine? So, wine, Rashi.
On what page is bread and wine?
What is that?
On what page is bread and wine?
Where am I reading? I'm on 40b. Do you see the top of 40b? The first 3 line, the 3rd line, 4th line.
Third or 4th line.
40b.
Rabbi Yehuda.
Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan. Are you on 40b?
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a Rav Huna and a Rabbi Yochanan there. Do you see those 2 names, Rav Huna, Rabbi Yochanan?
Well, I have 2 pages, Amud Bet, so I don't.
So it's the first one because it's right in the beginning.
The first one?
Yeah.
Rab Meir, I see, and Rab Yossi.
Well, you're too far ahead. You got to go a few lines earlier. Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan.
מברכים בורא פרי העץ, אלא בורא פרי האדמה. ועל כולן, אם אמר שהכל וכולו. Is that where you are?
Yes, that's where I started.
Okay.
So I already did 2 or 3 more lines. You can read them and catch up. So the opinion of Rav Huna is that wine and bread is excluded from the shahakol bracha, and Rabbi Yochanan says no, it's not excluded. It's included. You could fulfill your obligation if you mistakenly say shahakol. Now, what is special about bread and wine? So Rashi, on the top Rashi, he tells us that wine is unique, that it causes there to be a bracha for itself because you recite Kiddush with wine, you recite Havdalah with wine, and you recite the wedding brachas with wine. And therefore, the point is that even if you don't really want to drink wine, you still have to recite a bracha on the wine and drink it. So it has a special element to it that it's even for wine, it's like it's not just in the regular category of food. It goes beyond the regular category. Regular category of food, you want to eat something, you recite a bracha. If you're eating something that you don't really want, you're just taking it because medicine or for some other reason, and you don't want it, you don't enjoy the taste, you do not recite a bracha. But here on wine, you would recite a bracha. For Havdalah, for Kiddush, for Birchas Chasanim, for these blessings, you would recite the bracha even if you don't want to drink it. And or for example, there is a case that's mentioned in the Gemara that something is extreme. There's a fish that's extremely salty. So people used to take a little bread with that fish so that they would be able to swallow the fish because it was just so salty. That bread you do not recite a bracha on. But here, with wine, you recite a bracha on wine in certain scenarios, even if you don't want it. So because of that, wine is special. And the bracha on wine is a special bracha. And it covers even those categories, even for non-interest in wine, you still recite this bracha. This bracha has a special element to it. And therefore, the bracha shehakol doesn't cover that extra need, that wine, that extra element of wine. Now, the question is, what about chal? What about bread? Why is bread excluded? So you could say that bread is also included in this because you could recite kiddush on bread. So it's a similar reason that even if you don't want the bread, you would still have to recite the bracha on the bread to recite kiddush. If you don't have wine, you could recite kiddush on bread. Now, the other reason is that bread is considered a food. It has a chashivas. It has a special element to it because you are kivea suuda. You establish a meal on bread. Because of that, it gives it special importance. And there would be reason to say that the shehakol bracha is too generic for for bread that deserve, that's chashuv. Now, yes.
Does any of this go back to the base of Migdash that wine was used on the mizbeach and bread was used, the showbread loaves? There's some relationship there to why it's special.
I'll look it up for you, but I didn't see anything about that. So.
Rabbi, wine was used on the altar, but bread was not. Because
they couldn't have bread.
They could have leaven. Oh.
Showbread.
So yeah, I didn't see anything about with regard to that. There is a commentary that mentions that bread is even more unique. That even within the 7 species, it's like it's special because it's when the Torah talks about the 7 species, it adds afterwards the land asher loy b'miskenos toichal bo lechem, that it adds even after it talks about the specialty of the 7 species, it says in the land that that it's loy b'miskenos toichal bo lechem, you will not eat bread in poverty. So it sort of gives a special uniqueness to bread, even more than the 7 species. It exceptionalizes the bread. It makes it like exceptional. Okay, so in any event, that's bread and wine, and that's the question: are they included in shehakol or not? Yes, Ben.
I want to say, God, when He told Adam that he has to get out of Gan Eden, He told him, "B'ze'at apecha tochal lechem." He mentions lechem, but he doesn't mention wine, because lechem is the basic of life. Most people live on bread.
Yeah, the problem with that is sort of a curse. That's a curse. I don't know if that would be.
But still, it's a basic. He will have to have bread,
right?
But you'll work for it.
Okay. It's a staple food. Well, I guess what you're saying is the first explanation that I gave, that it's a koveya suuda. You establish a meal on bread. You sort of see that a little from that verse, that at least even with the curse, that this is the established meal. Okay, so the Gemara now asks a question that this argument between Rav Huna and Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara is trying to figure out, like, what's the logic behind it. And it says maybe this is the same logic as, or the same source as an argument that we find argued about by the Tanoim, by the earlier rabbis who are the authors of the Mishnah. And where do we find an argument of the Tanoim? So we find an argument between Reb Meir and Reb Yossi. And Reb Meir and Reb Yossi talk about a case where a person did not say a bracha the way we say brachas. He said, how beautiful is this bread? Blessed is Hashem who made it. And he's not even translating the bracha. He's reciting his own words of praise to Hashem. And we find an argument between the rabbis if that is acceptable or not. So let me go through it inside. Nema ketanoi. The Gemara says, let's say that this argument is the same argument of these Tanoim. That what do we find by these Tanoim? What do they argue about? Ra'ah pas, if a person saw bread, the Amar, and he said, Kama no'eh pasu, how beautiful is this bread? Baruch hamakim, blessed is Hashem. Blessed is Hashem who created it. So he said this, his own formula of a blessing. Blessed is Hamakim, Hashem, who created it. Literally, Hamakim means the place. And the meaning of that, it's often used, Hamakim means, in fact, it's used for mourning, for mourners, when a person consoles the mourners. He says, Hamakim Yanachim, Hashem should console. And you don't say Hashem's name, you say Hamakim. Hamakim refers to Hashem because it says that Hashem is not in the place of the world is in the place of Hashem, so to speak. And the world exists in Hashem's place, so to speak. So Hashem is called the place. And there is an argument when you say a bracha, do you need to say only Hashem, or do you also have to say Melech Ha'olam, the king of the world? Here he didn't say Melech Ha'olam, he only said this bread is beautiful. How beautiful is this bread? Blessed is Hashem who created it. He didn't say Hashem, the creator of the world. So how does that view work with this Mishnah, or this it's I guess a brisa? It's an argument of the Tosefta. So it's a Tosefta, and so how does that opinion fit with this? So the answer is that you have to say that according to that view, it's just leaving it out, but it means that he also said Melech Ha'olam. He said Hamakim, king of the world, and that created this. So the point is that he's reciting his own bracha, and he's reciting blessed is Hashem who created it. He's sort of making a bracha with his own, and he's saying a very generic bracha. Baruch hamakim shabara. The only thing is, he did say pas. How beautiful is this bread? Blessed is Hashem who created it. So Yatza, the first, the Mishnah or the Tosefta says Yatza, he has fulfilled his obligation. He gives another example. Ra'a te'ena, he saw a fig. Va'amar, and he said, Kamanoa te'enazu, how beautiful is this fig? And again, he either said Baruch hamakim shabra'a blessed is Hashem who created it, or blessed is Hashem, the king of the world, who created it. Yatsa, he has fulfilled his obligation. Divrei Reb Meir, these are the words of Reb Meir. Reb Yosi says, Kol hamashana mematbea shetavu chachamim bebrachos. Reb Yosi says that whoever changes the formula, the format that the rabbis established in law in brachas, lo yatsa yedei chayvasa, you have not fulfilled your obligation. You would need to recite the bracha again. So this is an argument between Reb Meir and Reb Yosi, and don't take any ideas from this. The halacha is we're not supposed to change from the format, but there is an opinion, Reb Meir, that says that you did fulfill your obligation. Yes, Robert.
In Sefaria, the phraseology for both brachot is how pleasant is this bread, blessed is the omnipresent who created it. And that, again, is the preference before both of those blessings. So it's still the same. It's just a different description of the same.
How do you translate omnipresent?
Omnipresent means
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Right.
It's everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere, always there.
So that fits with this the word hamakoim that I explained, that the world is in Hashem's place. Hashem is not in the world, but every place is in Hashem. In other words,
Right,
I'm taking
fits
it a step
into his
deeper.
world, into his world.
Right. Omnipresent just means Hashem is everywhere. But I think if you really want to translate it properly, it really means Hashem, who's beyond, who the space is in Hashem, not that Hashem is in the space. In other words, it's more than that, more than just that Hashem is everywhere. It's that everywhere is in Hashem.
Yeah.
You know, if you take it a little deeper. But
Yeah,
that's
no
good.
argument for me. No argument for me.
But that's the idea of hamakim. And you're right, it's not the typical word of Hashem, but that it's emphasizing it's one of the terms that could be used for Hashem. Yes, Simone.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly when Reb Meir, Reb Yossi lived, but I think that there was a period after the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash and the Jews went into exile, that there was a sense of we have to formalize and stabilize the various things that involved with Jewish life, brachas being one of them, so that everybody has the same thing no matter where they are now in the world, and that even though theoretically it would suffice to say, Baruch HaMacham rather than the formula, it kind of is opening the door to each individual area and group making their own changes. So this was kind of part of the idea. We've got one Torah, we've got one religion and one approach to it, and we have to kind of formalize that so everybody is on the same page.
So it's very well said, Simone. That's definitely what the opinion of Reb Yosi is definitely saying, that you can't change from the format that the rabbis established. The opinion of Reb Meir is it's sort of questionable. Why is Reb Meir allowing this? You would think that the rabbis established these blessings. They probably are meant to be followed. We should be following them. And what it seems like is maybe he's only saying that after the fact, if you already did it, you fulfilled your obligation, you don't do it again. But really, this is not the appropriate thing to do, even according to Reb Meir, because he also, acknowledges that this is the format that the rabbis established, and probably you should not be making up your own format, going against what the rabbis did. But he's saying once you said it already, you have fulfilled your obligation. We can't say that you are eating something, benefiting from Hashem, and stealing because you didn't thank him. You did thank him. So after the fact, you fulfilled your obligation. But it would seem to me that even Reb Meir, based on this logic, that the rabbis established it. You're taking it a little step further, saying that we need everything to be, we need it to be fully set in place. What is that? Formalized and established, canonized as this is this is the way it has to be, and nothing else, because we need everyone to follow the same. It's one religion. But I don't know if it's taking it that far. But it's definitely that's the rabbis established it this way. This is the way it's supposed to be, and we should not be making our own brachas. So it's a good thought. It's good point.
We go by the majority.
What did you say?
We go by the majority.
And what is the majority?
What they established before. This is just one idea, one man's idea.
Well, the question is, what happens if a person does this? And we don't have really a majority here. We have a Rabbi Meir and a Rabbi Yossi.
Yeah.
So, and a person did this. Who do you follow? So it doesn't seem like there's a majority here. But anyway, the Gemara wants to say that the situation here that we're talking about, where a person recited the bracha shahakol, and he said it on bread or on wine, is an argument if he fulfilled his obligation or not. The Gemara says maybe this is the same argument. The Gemara says, Nema, let's say Rav Huna de Amar ki Rav Yossi. Rav Huna says that you don't fulfill your obligation for bread and wine because the rabbis established a special blessing for bread and wine. You can't just fulfill it by seeing bread and reciting this bracha in your own words. The rabbis established a special blessing for wine, and you can't say shahakol, you can't say this other blessing. And Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar ki Reb Meir, and Rabbi Yochanan maybe follows Reb Meir. Rabbi Yochanan says, yeah, you could say shahakol on bread. He also says you could say any bracha. You could do all these other brachas as well, and therefore it would fit with Rabbi Yochanan to the opinion of Reb Meir. Now, there's numerous questions on this Gemara because it doesn't flow so perfectly, but we're going to talk about it on Sunday. I want to wish you all a very good Shabbos, and
Thank you,
continued.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good Shabbos, everyone.
Thank
Have
you,
a
Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
And thank you.